The Ridgewood Country Club's main dining room sparkled with crystal chandeliers and polished silver, exactly the kind of old-money elegance that made my extended family feel sophisticated and important. Tables draped in cream linen filled the space, each one carefully arranged for the Morrison family's annual reunion, a tradition that had continued for 23 years since Great-Uncle William had established it as a way to maintain family connections across generations. I sat at table 12, positioned strategically near the service entrance where the catering staff moved efficiently between the kitchen and dining room. It wasn't an accident that I'd been placed there. For the past 4 years since I'd left my corporate finance job to start what my family called playing with military equipment, I'd been relegated to the least prestigious seats at family gatherings. The seating chart reflected the family's internal hierarchy perfectly. Cousins with successful law practices, medical careers, and established businesses occupied the prime tables near the head table where Great-Uncle William held court as the family patriarch. Those of us considered less successful were scattered around the periphery, close enough to participate but far enough away to avoid disrupting important conversations. "Can you believe Sarah actually showed up?" my cousin Jennifer whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear. She was seated 3 tables away with her husband Mark, both of them dressed in the kind of expensive casual wear that screamed, "We belong here." "I heard she's been struggling since she quit her job at Goldman Sachs," my cousin Michael replied, adjusting his Rolex with the casual precision of someone who wanted everyone to notice it. Some kind of midlife crisis about wanting to find her passion, or whatever. The familiar shame washed over me as I sipped my water and pretended to study the club's architectural details. The truth was more complicated than they assumed, but I'd stopped trying to explain my career transition 3 years ago when it became clear that no one was interested in understanding. "You can't afford to be at this country club," Jennifer announced, her voice carrying across the dining room with the authority of someone who'd appointed herself the family's social arbiter. "The membership fees alone are $50,000 annually, plus dining minimums and event charges." Others nodded in agreement. My cousin David looked concerned rather than malicious, but he didn't contradict Jennifer's assessment. Even my Aunt Patricia, who'd always been kind to me, seemed uncomfortable with my presence at such an expensive venue. "Maybe Sarah has a sugar daddy," my cousin Lisa suggested with a cruel laugh. "How else would she afford to eat here?" More laughter rippled around the nearby tables. I kept my eyes on my salad, cutting small pieces of mixed greens while my family discussed my supposed financial struggles. "I mean, she drives that old Honda," Michael added. "Lives in some tiny apartment downtown. Clearly not making much money with whatever business venture she's attempting." "What does she even do now?" Jennifer asked, though she wasn't directing the question to me. "Something with consulting? Or maybe she's working for some startup that hasn't failed yet." "Defense contracting," my Aunt Patricia said quietly. "She mentioned something about military contracts when I talked to her last Christmas." "Oh, so she's trying to sell paperclips to the Pentagon," Jennifer said with theatrical disappointment. "How quaint." The conversation continued around me, my family members analyzing my career choices and financial situation as if I weren't sitting 20 feet away. This had become a tradition at family gatherings, using my apparent lack of success as a cautionary tale about the importance of maintaining stable corporate employment. What they didn't understand, what I'd stopped trying to explain, was that Titan Defense Solutions wasn't a small consulting firm struggling to sell office supplies to government bureaucrats. It was a $2.8 billion defense technology company that developed advanced radar systems, satellite communications equipment, and missile guidance technology for the U.S. military and allied nations. But my family saw my modest lifestyle and assumed failure. I'd founded Titan Defense 4 years ago after leaving Goldman Sachs, using my background in military finance and my understanding of defense procurement processes. The company had grown from a single contract worth $50,000 to become one of the fastest-growing defense contractors in the country, with active projects for the Air Force, Navy, Army, and several NATO allies. However, explaining defense contracting to civilians was complicated, especially when most of the work involved classified projects that couldn't be discussed in detail. It was easier to let my family make assumptions than to violate security protocols trying to correct their misconceptions. "I heard she's living paycheck to paycheck," Michael said, his voice filled with the kind of false sympathy that made the criticism sting more. "Apparently she had to borrow money from her parents last year." That wasn't true, but I didn't correct him. The loan he was referring to was actually a business investment where my parents had purchased a small equity stake in Titan Defense. They'd received a 400% return on their investment when we'd completed our Series B funding round, but they'd never mentioned that windfall to the extended family. It's sad, really, Jennifer continued, apparently not finished with her analysis of my life choices. Sarah was always the smart one. Harvard MBA fast track at Goldman Sachs seemed destined for real success. Then she throws it all away to chase some entrepreneurial fantasy. Maybe she'll figure it out eventually, David said with genuine concern. Some people need to learn the hard way that business ownership isn't for everyone. My phone buzzed discreetly in my purse. I glanced at it. Margaret Wu, my executive assistant. I let it ring, not wanting to give my family additional ammunition about my inability to maintain professional boundaries during social events. The phone buzzed again 30 seconds later. Margaret again. Sarah, Aunt Patricia said gently, noticing my phone. Maybe you should take that call? It might be important. It's probably a bill collector, Jennifer said with a laugh that wasn't entirely joking. Or maybe her landlord asking about rent. The phone buzzed a third time. This was unusual. Margaret was extraordinarily professional and wouldn't call repeatedly during a family event unless something urgent was happening. Excuse me for just a moment, I said, standing and walking toward the club's lobby area to take the call privately. Margaret, I answered quietly, what's happening? Ms. Johnson, I apologize for interrupting your family gathering, but we have a significant development with the Boeing contract. What kind of development? The Pentagon fast-tracked the approval process. Boeing's executive team flew in from Seattle this morning and they're requesting an immediate contract signing ceremony. They want to formalize the agreement today rather than waiting until next week. I felt my pulse quicken. The Boeing contract was the largest single deal in Titan Defense's history. A $2 billion agreement to provide advanced radar systems for the new generation of military transport aircraft. Margaret, I'm at a family event at Ridgewood Country Club. I understand, and normally I would reschedule, but Boeing's CEO is only available today. They have a board meeting Monday morning where they need to announce the contract signing, and the Pentagon wants the deal finalized before the weekend. How urgent is this? Ms. Johnson, this contract represents 40% of our projected revenue for the next 3 years. Boeing's executives flew here specifically to meet with you, and the Pentagon liaison is standing by for the signing ceremony. I looked back toward the dining room where my family was probably still discussing my financial struggles and poor life choices. Margaret, how long would the signing take? Approximately 1 hour. We've prepared everything in the club's business center. Signature pages, witness documentation, executive summaries for the Boeing team. I took the liberty of reserving the boardroom when I realized we might need it. The club's boardroom? Yes, ma'am. I called ahead and explained that we needed space for a major business transaction. The club management was very accommodating once I mentioned the nature of the contract. I made a decision that would change everything. Margaret, bring the Boeing executives to the dining room. Ma'am. Bring them to the main dining room where my family is eating. I want them to meet me there. Are you certain? This is a very high-profile contract signing. I'm certain. Give me 5 minutes to prepare the family, then bring the Boeing team to table 12. Understood, Ms. Johnson. The executives are very excited to finalize this agreement. I returned to the dining room where the conversation about my financial situation was still ongoing. Jennifer was explaining to a cousin from out of town how my career transition had been a cautionary tale about the dangers of abandoning stable employment. I took my seat at table 12 and waited. Sarah, David said as I sat down, everything okay with your phone call? Just some business to handle, I said quietly. I hope it wasn't anything too serious, Aunt Patricia said with concern. You looked worried when you stepped out. Nothing I can't manage. Jennifer laughed. Let me guess. Client emergency? Sarah, you need to set better boundaries with your consulting clients. They shouldn't be calling you during family events. It wasn't exactly a consulting matter, I said. Oh. Michael raised an eyebrow. What kind of business emergency requires handling during Sunday brunch at the country club? Before I could answer, I saw Margaret approaching across the dining room. She was dressed in her usual professional attire, charcoal gray suit, understated jewelry, leather portfolio, and she was followed by 4 people in expensive business suits who moved with the confident precision of corporate executives. The dining room began to quiet as other diners noticed the group of obviously important business people making their way purposefully across the room. "Sarah," Margaret said as she reached table 12, "I hope I'm not interrupting your family celebration." Every conversation in the nearby tables stopped. My cousins were staring at Margaret and the executives with expressions of confusion and growing curiosity. "Not at all, Margaret. What do you need?" "Ms. Johnson, I'd like you to meet the Boeing executive team." Margaret gestured to the 4 people standing beside our table with professional confidence. "This is James Chin, CEO of Boeing Defense, Space and Security. Patricia Martinez, Senior Vice President for Military Contracts. Robert Kim, Chief Financial Officer. And Colonel Sarah Thompson, Pentagon Liaison for Advanced Defense Systems." The dining room had gone completely silent. 50 family members holding forks and coffee cups, all staring at the group of executives who had apparently come to our family reunion to conduct business. "Ms. Johnson," James Chin extended his hand with a warm smile, "it's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your reputation in defense contracting precedes you." I stood and shook hands with each executive while my family watched in stunned silence. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Chin. Thank you for making the trip on such short notice." "Ms. Johnson," Patricia Martinez said, "I want you to know that Boeing's board of directors is incredibly excited about this partnership. Titan Defense's radar technology represents the future of military aviation systems." Jennifer's mouth was hanging open. Michael had set down his coffee cup and was leaning forward to catch every word. "Colonel Thompson," I said, turning to the Pentagon representative, "I appreciate the Department of Defense expediting the approval process." "Ms. Johnson, when technology like yours comes along, we move quickly," Colonel Thompson replied. "The radar systems Titan Defense has developed will give our pilots capabilities they've never had before." Margaret opened her portfolio and removed a leather-bound document folder. "Ms. Johnson, if you're ready, we can proceed with the contract signing." "What contract signing?" Great-Uncle William called from the head table, his voice carrying across the now-silent dining room. "The $2 billion defense contract between Boeing and Titan Defense Solutions," Margaret announced to the room. "Ms. Johnson's company will be providing advanced radar systems for the next generation of military transport aircraft." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the air conditioning system cycling on. $2 billion? Jennifer's voice came out as a whisper. "Ms. Johnson," James Chin said, addressing both me and apparently my entire family, "this contract represents one of the largest defense technology agreements Boeing has signed this year. Titan Defense Solutions has developed radar capabilities that exceed anything currently available in the market." David was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Sarah, you own Titan Defense Solutions?" "I founded it 4 years ago," I said simply. "But Titan Defense Solutions is..." Michael was frantically Googling something on his phone. "It's one of the top defense contractors in the country. We've been fortunate to work on several important projects," I said modestly. Robert Kim, the Boeing CFO, addressed my family directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, your family member has built one of the most innovative defense technology companies in America. Titan Defense's radar systems are revolutionary. They can detect threats at distances and with accuracy levels that were impossible just 5 years ago." "Ms. Johnson," Colonel Thompson added, "the Pentagon considers Titan Defense to be a strategic national asset. Your technology is helping to protect American servicemen and women around the world." Margaret placed the contract documents on the table in front of me. "Ms. Johnson, shall we proceed with the signing?" I looked around the dining room at 50 family members who were processing the fact that their failed relative was about to sign a $2 billion defense contract at Sunday brunch. "Actually," I said, "let me introduce the Boeing team to my family first. This is quite an honor for all of us." For the next 30 minutes, Boeing executives and Pentagon representatives mingled with my extended family, explaining advanced radar technology, military aviation systems, and the strategic importance of Titan Defense's innovations. My cousins asked questions about defense contracting, national security, and the technology that was apparently reshaping modern warfare. "Ms. Johnson," Great-Uncle William approached me as the contract signing concluded, "I owe you a profound apology." "Uncle William, you don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. We've spent years treating you like the family member who couldn't make it in the real world, while you were actually building a company that serves our national defense. Different kinds of success look different from the outside, I said gently. Jennifer appeared beside us, her face flushed with embarrassment. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I said terrible things about your financial situation. You made assumptions based on what you could see, I replied. I live modestly because I reinvest profits back into research and development. Every dollar I don't spend on luxury items goes toward developing better technology to protect American military personnel. But why didn't you correct us? Michael asked, joining our conversation. Why let us think you were struggling financially? I thought about how to answer while watching Margaret coordinate the final contract details with Boeing's legal team. Because I wanted to know that my family cared about me regardless of my bank account, I said. If I'd started every conversation with my company's valuation, would your interest in my life have been genuine or financially motivated? The question hung in the air as more family members gathered around us. Sarah, David said quietly, we failed that test pretty badly. You focused on external markers of success rather than trying to understand what I was actually building, I said. But that's understandable. Defense contracting isn't visible the way other careers are. How big is your company really? Aunt Patricia asked with genuine curiosity. Titan Defense employs 3,400 people across 12 facilities, I said. We have active contracts with all branches of the U.S. military plus defense partnerships with the UK, Australia, Canada, and Japan. And you founded this 4 years ago? Jennifer asked, still processing the magnitude of what she'd learned. I saw opportunities in defense technology that weren't being addressed by existing contractors, I explained. My background in military finance helped me understand what capabilities were needed and how to develop them efficiently. James Chin approached our group as his team prepared to leave. Ms. Johnson, I want to thank you again for accommodating our schedule change. The contract signing went perfectly. Thank you for making the trip, Mr. Chin. Ms. Johnson, I hope your family understands how fortunate they are to have you, he said, addressing the group around us. Titan Defense is one of Boeing's most valued partners, and Sarah's leadership in defense technology is recognized throughout the industry. After the Boeing executives departed, the family reunion continued with a completely different energy. Instead of discussions about my apparent failure, conversations focused on national security, technology innovation, and the intersection of business success with public service. Sarah, Great Uncle William said during his traditional closing remarks, I want to apologize on behalf of the family for not understanding the importance of your work. Uncle William, defense contracting is complicated to explain, especially since much of it involves classified projects. But we should have asked better questions and listened more carefully to your answers. You should have trusted that I knew what I was doing, even when it didn't look like conventional success. As the reunion concluded and family members prepared to leave, Jennifer approached me in the parking lot. Sarah, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you happy? With your work, your company, the path you've chosen? I looked back at the country club where the staff was cleaning up after our family gathering, then at my modest Honda parked between my cousin's luxury vehicles. Jennifer, I wake up every morning knowing that the technology we develop helps protect American service members in dangerous situations around the world, I said. When our radar systems help a pilot avoid a missile, or when our communications equipment helps soldiers coordinate safely, that's the most fulfilling work I can imagine. That sounds like happiness. It is. The financial success enables us to invest in better technology and hire the best engineers. But the real satisfaction comes from knowing that our work saves lives. Sarah, I'm sorry for all the things I said today. And for assuming you couldn't afford to be here. Jennifer, you were focused on appearances and traditional markers of success. That's natural. Most people measure achievement by visible lifestyle choices. But you were building something extraordinary while we were criticizing you for not displaying wealth. I was building something that mattered to me even when other people didn't understand its value. 6 months later, Titan Defense was selected as the prime contractor for a $4.7 billion missile defense system, making it one of the largest defense contracts in U.S. history. The announcement made national news, with several articles mentioning my transition from Wall Street to defense technology entrepreneurship. At that year's family reunion, I was seated at table 1, next to Great Uncle William. But more importantly, the conversation focused on understanding each other's work rather than making assumptions based on appearances. To Sarah, Great Uncle William said in his closing toast, who taught our family that the most important success often happens where others can't see it, and that true achievement is measured by the problems you solve rather than the luxury items you display. As we raised our glasses, I reflected on how much had changed since that Sunday afternoon when my cousins had whispered that I couldn't afford to be at the country club. Sometimes families need dramatic demonstrations to understand that the quietest member might be the one accomplishing the most important work. And sometimes, if you're patient enough and committed enough, they eventually recognize that what looked like failure was actually building something extraordinary. The most meaningful recognition doesn't come from industry awards or government contracts. It comes from families who learn to measure success by contribution rather than consumption, and who understand that the person they've been underestimating might be the one protecting everything they care about.